What I did is I'm just going to take a shot. Everyone expects me to lose. What's interesting about Massachusetts, I got my butt kicked, right? 20 points, but I was the first Republican candidate to get over 40% in 20 years for Senate. It shows you sort of how tough it is in Massachusetts. But, I'm thinking about it. I would entertain it. Ed Markey is 80 years old, and he's running again in 2026, and he's the co-author with AOC of the Green New Deal. I mean, he's either more left than Elizabeth Warren. I tell everybody, I'm not a young man, as you can see, but when he first went to Washington, I was 9. I really want to have a real shot at winning. And so if a poll comes out that shows that I can beat him, and certainly if the crypto world, and when I say crypto world, token holders, helped me, but I meant like the fair shakes and the big pockets.
Welcome back to the Block Fuel Podcast. We're here live with John Deaton. So super excited. We had you on, I think it was like 6 months ago, definitely before the elections. Big news coming in. So we'll just hop right into it. We're here in New York at Digital Asset Summit. Breaking news, I think about a couple hours ago, SEC dropped the case against Ripple. So
they did.
I know you've been talking quite a bit about that, but would love to.
Yeah, it's been a long 4+ years. I was at the Digital Asset Summit. Brad Garlinghouse was on stage. He broke the news on X about 15 minutes before going on stage that the SEC decided to drop the appeal that they were appealing. So everybody knows the judge said originally that Ripple, when they made some early sales to institutions, that they should have registered them and fined Ripple for that, but said that secondary market sales, which was what I was all concerned with and XRP holders were concerned with, that if you go on Coinbase or Kraken or anywhere else and you buy XRP, you're not buying a security, you're buying, a digital token, a digital currency. But the SEC was appealing that under Gensler because they were going after secondary sales. They were going after Coinbase and Kraken, and they were claiming that not just XRP, but Solana, Cardano, all of these tokens on the secondary market were securities. And so election happens, Gensler's gone, new SEC drops the Coinbase Kraken cases, and now this is the last one, dropping their appeal, which basically says in so many words that these cryptos are considered digital commodities. Bitcoin's not the only digital commodity, Ethereum, XRP, Cardano, etc.
So I saw the price jumped about 10% on that news. Any impact you think this will have, like proliferate across Bitcoin and everything else kind of moving forward?
Well, I think what it's sending that message. I think that the SEC taking its boot off the neck of the industry, which that's exactly what it was doing. And then you talk about the strategic Bitcoin reserve that the president set up, where he's directed the Commerce Secretary, who's a Bitcoiner with hundreds of millions worth of Bitcoin and minority owner and Tether, to acquire more Bitcoin along with the Secretary Treasurer in a budget neutral way. That's as aggressive as you can get. I agree with what Brad Garlinghouse said today on stage. And he said that the industry and the market has not priced in all of the tailwinds that are at the back now of the industry. When you add that up, and then you add the fact that now the Office of the Comptroller has come out and said that it is okay for banks to custody crypto, you're going to start seeing, the Charles Schwabs, the Bank of Americas, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, they're all going to start offering crypto custody services. You know what I mean?
I saw BNY Mellon, and I've heard, whispers of what you're saying. And yeah, it just seems pretty obvious. Really interesting to see. I don't know if the timing was set up like that. It almost seemed like too perfect there, but you just mentioned the president, the first pro crypto president that we've had. He made a big splash at Bitcoin Nashville, and then we're going to see if maybe he'll show up or something. Probably not at Vegas, but like in terms of the Trump meme coin, what are your thoughts on like politicians doing something like that?
Well, listen, I wasn't a fan, to be candid, of the Trump meme coin. Here's my concern. I'm someone who has fought. A lot of people, when I went after the SEC and I got involved in the Ripple case, the Elizabeth Warrens of the world would say I'm anti-regulation. I'm not. I'm pro-regulation, just smart, tailored regulations, because that's what's holding the industry back, this lack of regulatory clarity. But my fear is that we go from one extreme, which is the government's boot on the neck of the industry, everything's going offshore instead of America. And then we go from that to just wide open and it's a free for all.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see that. We have a real opportunity. And I want everybody to know that it's kind of scary to think of, but a year from now, we'll be in full election season. The midterm elections, right? We just finished one, right?
Yeah.
But
it's nonstop.
the 2026 midterms will come in place, and then there'll be a big fight, and legislation might halt. So we have, you know, a couple hundred days while you have the Trump administration and the Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the presidency to get real reform. So stablecoin legislation looks like it's going to pass, which is great. But we also need the market structures bill that says, you know what? Instead of FinCEN, SEC, CFTC, Treasury, OFAC, instead of all these agencies having a hand in this industry, this will be who regulates crypto. So let's say it's the CFTC. These are digital commodities. You're going to regulate it. Here is what a security token is. Here's what an exchange token is. Here's what a commodity token is. Give clear rules. Let's stop applying a 1946 Supreme Court case, Howie, to modern day technology like quantum computing, artificial intelligence, blockchain. Let's make sure we do that. Let's also get some consumer protection in place. For example, you know, I'm a Coinbase customer, right? I have an account. If Coinbase filed bankruptcy today, my money would be considered assets on Coinbase. And Coinbase's creditors would try to claim access to my funds, right? So we need to make sure that bankruptcy protection, that we got no commingling of customer funds, what happened at FTX. So we got segregation of funds. We have 100% reserve mandate so that they're not rehypothesizing. How do you say it?
Rehypothecate.
Yeah.
It's the only word I know. So.
That they're not doing that and lending out your crypto, right? It's 100% reserves. And if there's bankruptcy filed by the centralized exchange or entity, your funds are your funds.
Right.
And it's not considered the funds of the entity. And so I want to make sure we do that. Also, tax policy. XRP's up. You mentioned XRP, right? So I own Bitcoin, I own XRP, a few other things. Let's say I want to buy my breakfast, buy breakfast with my XRP, right? I want to use it on, let's say it's on a debit card or something like that. Now, since I bought it at 50 cents maybe, and I want to spend, $50, I have to have a capital gains tax.
Yeah,
so
that's crazy.
We need to make sure, let's figure out what our tax policy is. Are we going for a certain level of transactions that you won't have a capital gains transaction, and so that we can start actually utilizing this as a currency? It's called cryptocurrency. So are we able to use it as a currency, or are they all just going to be considered store of values?
Right.
And price appreciation hold, and hopefully it goes up. That sounds more like a stock. Or a commodity like gold, but I'd like to see some kind of real tax policy. And finally, the accredited investor rule needs to be changed. You can serve your country in the military for 20 years, but if you're not worth $1 million and you can't count your house, or you don't make 300 grand a year for 3 years in a row, you can't buy private equity shares.
That's crazy.
That's insane, right? Congress can.
You
Nancy
buy meme coins,
Pelosi,
though,
right? Right. And so you can go get scratch tickets. You can play the lotto.
Buy a gun.
Right. You can go to the casino, blow all your money, but you can't own pre-IPO shares of Ripple or Kraken or Circle that are going to go public soon. That's just silly. You're excluding like people from being able to build wealth.
Totally. No, I agree. I mean, that is pretty crazy. You mentioned like buying things with XRP. Do you see a world in which that happens? Because like you're not going to go buy with like your Amazon stock, right? Because it moves so volatile, where the dollar, moves up and down, but not nearly the speed in which crypto does. So do you see, other than stablecoins, people being able to accept?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because that was really the big use case from my position for XRP. In the Ripple case, there were companies, there was a company called TapJets, which is basically Uber in the air.
Okay.
So like if we wanted to go to the West Coast and we could afford to like fly private, you could call them up and like within an hour or two, you'd have like a jet ready.
Cool.
But on a Friday or Saturday or Sunday, the bank's closed.
Right.
And so there's no wire. You can't make a wire. So they start accepting XRP. So you could pay for the private, the flight attendant, the food, the fuel, all at once. And so that's an example of using a token. And so I know that with Bitcoin, there's been lots of places that have tried and used Lightning or other things to try to use it as currency. But I think at a minimum, there was an XRP debit card before the Ripple lawsuit on Uphold. Uphold Exchange had a debit card with XRP. So when you used it to pay for gas or your breakfast or whatever, it would be used more like a credit card, but it would deduct your XRP.
Right.
I think that we're away from that. I think, and with stablecoins coming in, they sort of replaced that. There's no doubt that I think stablecoins are going to drive the adoption more than anything ever. Brad Garlinghouse today, think about it. Ripple has XRP, yet what did they start? They started a stablecoin, RLUSD, to compete with Tether and Circle USD, right? And so Brad Garlinghouse said that in the next 5 years, stablecoin market cap will 10x.
Yeah, I believe it.
And I believe it. When you look at you just look at the friction, the process, cross-border payments. I mean, I don't know if we still do wires, and why does it take 5 days?
That's crazy.
International wire.
It's crazy.
And crazy, Brad Garlinghouse on stage today, and it's kind of ironic because Ripple was supposed to replace Swift, right?
People thought that was what I originally thought.
Right, and he got on stage and said that he's planning some kind of summer thing, and he made a bank transfer, and they lost Swift. It was one of the 6 or 8% that got lost.
Okay.
And he's like on the phone yelling, like, if you took XRP, right?
Yeah, it is crazy in today's society where everything, I mean, like the stock market, I think NASDAQ's going like 24/7.
Right. And think about all the Bitcoin, like just think about all of the green candles that we've seen.
Yeah.
Bitcoin goes up 6,000 over the weekend. Wall Street's looking at that, and all they're thinking about are fees,
right,
and the arbitrage, right, and all the money that they could be missing out. But it's Saturday and Sunday, so I think we're going to that world. And I know you guys are talking about tokenization a lot. Larry Fink, that's all he talks about.
Yep.
Almost every time of BlackRock, he's got 11 trillion under management. So he claims every asset is going to be tokenized. And it is an exciting thing to think about. You know, one of my issues, I come from extreme poverty in my life.
Yeah.
A single mother on welfare and food stamps. And it's one of the reasons I got in this industry, because I remember my mom begging, like check cashing stores that you see in the hood. She couldn't go to the bank because they had the bank fees. So, because she could never keep a minimum deposit. So she would beg check cashing stores to take less of a fee. Instead of 15%, take 10 because we needed the money. So when you think of Bitcoin and crypto, and you don't need the bank, you don't need the MoneyGram, you don't need the Western Union, it really was exciting for me. And when you think about tokenization, people can't afford a home, but you know what they could afford? A fractional ownership of the apartment building that they live in. You know, maybe they can't afford the condo, but if that real estate was tokenized, and then, you know, you had a fractional share, maybe that tokenized is 1%.
Yeah.
Whatever, but it's ownership, right? You're building. So it's a way to almost kind of bring back the American dream. The American dream was to build wealth. Kind of hard today.
Very hard.
If you don't come from money, or you don't know somebody who knows somebody, and if you went to school and you don't have money, you don't have a parent that paid for it, then you're probably starting off not at zero. You're probably starting off at minus 100,000, minus 200,000 because you got student loan debt.
The boomers will look at us as lazy, and you're like, wait a second, the salaries are not increasing nearly as much as the home prices are. Shifting back, I know we were just talking about like the Bitcoin reserve, strategic reserve. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because I think people are a little bit unclear. We're not necessarily like buying new, at least right now. It sounds like we're not buying new Bitcoin. It's the Bitcoin that was, I think, seized. Correct me if I'm wrong. And what just overall thoughts on like having a Bitcoin reserve, kind of this dichotomy of people love the independence, but now everything's kind of getting centralized, at the same time, which I think is inevitable, right? Good or bad, I think it's just inevitable. But, crack open the hood a little bit on what the Bitcoin reserve is and how do you see that playing out over the next couple of years?
I believe that what President Trump's executive order is as aggressive as it can be. And a lot of people were disappointed almost. It seemed like on crypto Twitter, people thought, oh, would they think the president was going to say, hey, go print dollars to buy Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin's supposed to be a hedge against the debasement of the dollar. So you don't print more dollars to debase it further to buy the debasement hedge, right? That makes no sense. So, and plus it takes an act of Congress. Congress owns the purse, controls the purse. So what he said is okay, the first thing we need is a policy, because in the last 10 years, the United States government started with 400,000 Bitcoin. At one point, they were the third largest in the world. Actually second at one point after Satoshi, Shell's wallet. We sold off 200,000 Bitcoin in the last 10 years for a total of $366 million. Had we held that Bitcoin, it would be worth 17 billion.
Crazy.
So the first step is, okay.
Like the Bitcoin pizza on, on speed.
So the first thing is, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to hodl. The government's going to hodl Bitcoin, our 200,000 Bitcoin. We're going to hold it at the Treasury, and we're not going to sell it. We're going to put it, I'm surprised they didn't put it in a cryptographic escrow so that, and maybe they will, so that the next president can't sell it as soon as it comes in. But that's the first step. The altcoins, we're just going to put those in a digital stockpile that we own, and we're not selling the Bitcoin. But the president went one step further and said he directed Howard Lutnick, who is the Commerce Secretary, and Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, to, quote, acquire more Bitcoin in a budget neutral way.
Okay.
And that is as aggressive as you can get, because budget neutral, the first budget neutral is any more seized Bitcoin. Now, this is good because it actually incentivizes the government to go after bad guys, right? So if somebody's using Bitcoin for nefarious reasons, the government attacks him and sees that Bitcoin, that goes into our reserve. So that's budget neutral. Here's another thing they call Bitcoin digital gold. We own the most above ground gold. Well, allegedly, we're going to find out what not, right? But allegedly, we own, America owns between 3 and 5% of all the above ground gold in the world. But that gold on our books is marked at prices from way back. So just by reevaluating our gold to current prices, it's going to be like $1 trillion. Wow. Well, you could take that money, it'd be budget neutral, and buy Bitcoin. Or you could sell 10% of the physical gold that we own.
That'd be a statement.
Right? Because you're buying digital gold. So what you're doing is diversifying your gold. We got digital gold, we got physical gold. And so if you sold some of the Bitcoin and used the proceeds to buy, sold some of the gold to buy Bitcoin, that's budget neutral. Didn't increase $1, just use the funds. You could say to a government contractor, we want you to pay in Bitcoin, and we're going to put 1% in our strategic reserve. That's budget neutral. How about this? You and I pay our taxes. We have the option of paying in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And the government says we're going to take 1%, it could be 0.5%, something small, and every taxpayer who pays in Bitcoin their taxes, we're going to put 1% in our strategic reserve. That would be budget neutral because that's money coming in. So, and then you could issue Bitcoin bonds. You could do what Saylor's doing.
Yeah.
Except the government, if you want it. There's just so many ways. And, I know the market hasn't priced all that in, and I think it's still digesting it. But
yeah,
I think it's the best time. There is a strong argument that today is more of an asymmetric bet to buy Bitcoin and other cryptos than 5 years ago. Because 5 years ago we had uncertainty, right?
I agree.
Like you could use XRP as an example. Well, what if the government wins the case? So today it makes more sense. Same thing with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I think that there's a stronger case to make for a financial advisor to recommend buying 1 to 5% of your investment in Bitcoin than 5 years ago, even though Bitcoin was 20,000.
I think it was always this lingering thing. Does it go to zero? And
Right.
I think the ETFs, we talk about this way too much on the show, but like, I think that was a big like floor for people and thinking, okay, institutions are
That was a
coming in.
watershed moment.
That was huge. And I'm just curious. I actually had the opportunity. I was very fortunate to meet Michael Saylor and listen to him speak down in Miami, and he's just a good salesman too. Like, he makes it make so much sense.
Did you buy Bitcoin?
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because like you think, and I'm happy you talked about that, because like my whole thought was, are they going to buy it at 80 or are they going to crash the market on purpose to buy it at 40 or 50? So that was something that was in my head. But if they're never going to buy more, and it's kind of going to be through the ways that you just mentioned, that makes more sense. I do want to shift gears to last time we talked, you were running against Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
Very upset you didn't win, but like we were doing as much as we could to get people out and voting, and you're just a man of the people, right? And so what's next for you in that field? Are you going to run again? I don't know if you can declare that on this podcast here.
When I ran, I didn't have a real plan for the future. A lot of people was thinking, oh, is he running to get his name out there? Because no one was stepping up against her. It was February of 2024. No one was running against her. She's out there gaslighting the world in America about crypto and her anti.
She goes on her jets and hides behind the.
And so what I did is I just, I'm just gonna take a shot, and everyone expects me to lose. What's interesting about Massachusetts, I got my butt kicked, right? 20 points, but I was the first Republican candidate to get over 40% in 20 years for Senate. And so it shows you sort of how tough it is in Massachusetts. But, I'm thinking about it. I would entertain it. Ed Markey is 80 years old, and he's running again in 2026. And he's the co-author with AOC of the Green New Deal. I mean, he's either more left than Elizabeth Warren, which says a lot.
Yeah.
I tell everybody, I'm not a young man, as you can see, but when he first went to Washington, I was 9, which shows you. So if there's data that shows that I can win, then I would entertain it. But I really want to have a real shot at winning. And so if a poll comes out that shows that I can beat him, and certainly if the crypto world, and when I say crypto world, token holders, helped me, but I meant like the fair shakes and the big pockets. If they were behind it and we could win, I would do it. I don't want to run just to run. I want a real shot. Elizabeth Warren, I thought I could only win if lightning happened. Like all the stars had to line up. I had to be the only one in the primary. Well, that didn't happen. 2 other people got in the primary. So then you spend all your time trying to win the primary. And I was talking to the Bitcoin conference. I was talking to Bernie Moreno, who won in Ohio. And he was shocked because he goes to me, what do you mean you have a primary? I go, dude, my primary is September 3rd. And he shook his head. He goes, John, I wouldn't even run, because their primary was March. So in Ohio, they knew from March to November, it was Bernie Moreno versus Sherrod Brown.
So you had time to.
Mine was September 3rd. So Elizabeth Warren would say, who knows if Deaton will even win the primary?
Right.
And people that you asked to donate, they would say, John, I like you, but you might not win the primary. So like, I don't want to waste my money. So then you spend all your time winning the primary and only dealing with Republicans, because I got to convince the Republicans to vote for me. And so you do that. I won by 65%, but then the next day a poll came out that showed me losing to Warren by 24.
Damn.
Right. And I improved, but plus she had 25 million. I had 3 million.
What's it like? I mean, like it's people see politics on TV and you know, it's so cool to be, you know, with you here in this room, but it's just anything that you learned that you're comfortable sharing,
Sure.
you know, that was like behind the curtains here.
I thought I could tell you this. What you see with Elizabeth Warren is what you get. She's not a warm person. Like I thought, you know how you could disagree with someone, like completely disagree on policy, but walk away and be like, ah, she's or he's a pretty good dude, right? Or she's a good girl, whatever, like decent person. Warren has no. Like there was a moment I was having fun with her, right? So we're standing next to each other, and it's the first debate. And she's very standoffish and whatever. And we go to commercial break. We got 2 minutes. And she's writing down notes. And I go, Senator, like that. And she looks, and I go like this for a fist bump. And she goes, like, you could tell she's just, like, and the other thing that surprised me is when you run for office, the media looks to bring you down. Like as soon as John Deaton announced, they want to go negative. So, for example, even the newspaper, the Boston Globe, did an article on me. The year before, I had a loss at work, like a significant business loss. I didn't make any money. COVID, still digging out of COVID. So I didn't pay any taxes because I didn't make any money.
Really on that,
right? The year before, I had a monster year. I paid $1 million in taxes for just federal taxes. Wow. That was more than Elizabeth Warren and her husband paid for 3 years combined. Well, what do you think the article in the paper was? Deaton didn't pay taxes. I didn't make any money.
Crazy.
Right? And then buried in the article, they tell, oh, by the way, you know, he did pay the year before and this is what he paid, but the title of the headline was Deaton didn't pay taxes, which is factually true, but Deaton didn't make money that year. So you don't pay taxes if you don't make money.
It's crazy too. And that's like something we actually brought on this company called Autopilot, which like they're famous for like the Pelosi tracker, right?
Oh yeah.
And so I just find it so fascinating that these guys have $185,000 salaries, but then have a net worth of, you know, 50, 60, $100 million.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
I don't know. You know, it's funny during the debate, Elizabeth Warren, because when you run for office, you have to disclose. But the disclosures are like, let's say I own, it'll say like 50,000 to $1 million, right? It's this huge gap.
Right. Okay.
Right. And so I disclosed my Bitcoin holdings, XRP, stocks, whatever. So Elizabeth Warren gets on stage and she says, and you could be worth 100 million. Now I'm nowhere near. Right. And I publicly disclosed exactly what it was, but she just threw that out there to make me look bad, which why would that make me look bad? I come from food stamps, right? My book's called Food Stamp Warrior.
That's great.
But what I said to her on the debate stage was, I said, you know, Senator Warren, whatever I have, I made by hard work before going to Washington. What people are sick and tired of, people like you.
Yeah, I remember
that. Go to Washington broke, and 10 years later, you're worth multiple millions and millions of dollars. Like, how's that happen? How do you have $175,000 salary? You own 2 homes, one in Washington, one in Boston or Massachusetts, and you're worth how many tens of millions? That it just doesn't add up.
The bank's backing her like a
you know. No, she's the biggest bank lobby in the world. Even the Genius Act, the Stablecoin.
They cry poverty, and
she was trying to get amendments in, and Tim Scott was, you know, rejecting all her amendments, but she is completely for the big banks. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, amazing.
She pretends to be against them,
right?
But she really is.
Her and Bernie Sanders, Bernie's got like 3 homes.
It's funny. Bernie has 2 vacation homes. Right? He's a socialist. Yeah, but he's got 2. How many vacation homes you got?
Yeah,
I don't have any. I'll be honest.
The hypocrisy, you know. It is so much more so on one side, but both sides, you know, are a little bit. They're
all. You know, it wasn't a planned line, but the line that a lot of people liked in the first debate when Senator Warren was, you know, saying, is when I said, you know, according to Senator Warren, Republicans are evil and all the Democrats are great. And I looked there and said, I got news for you. You all suck.
It's true. Last question, I guess, here would be, around like what's next for crypto, Bitcoin? Like we had this XRP today, and a lot of people were waiting for that. The president has indicated like, positive movements as well. What other bills are out there that like could be positive momentum? And then, once all this is passed, what's keeping the price, moving and higher and higher? I guess the fact that there's 21 million of them.
Yeah.
So people are going to go after that. But just curious, maybe more from the political side, any bills that are coming up?
Yeah, I think the first one is going to be obviously stablecoin. Looks like it's going to Bo Hines, who's on the executive director of the crypto council for the White House, said that they expect the bills to be on the president's desk before the August break.
Yeah.
Now the question is it just going to be stable coins that get passed, or are they going to have the structured bill too that lays out which agency's in charge and all that? The stable coin legislation and the crypto custody of banks are the two biggest drivers. I think that you're going to see massive, what's going to end up happening is watch Bank of America will probably announce their own stable coin.
Yep.
I guarantee you Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, they're all probably going to come up with some kind of,
I thought Jamie Dimon hates.
Oh yeah, of course. So
same with Larry Fink.
And I think really this is what I've said to everybody for the last 4 years. The crypto industry has fought for its survival. The next 4 years, we fight for legitimacy. Are we going to be meme coins and NFTs, or are we going to be utility? Like, are we going to focus on
age of utility,
on solving some real problems? Stable coins will eliminate friction in the banking, cross-border payments, and all of that. And then we'll see. I do believe that, when you get past all of the thousands and thousands of tokens, there's a lot of garbage.
Right. Yeah,
there really are. And most of them are worthless, in my opinion. But you have some projects that I think are gonna make it. And you see all these ETFs. The real issue for me is crypto just going to be TradFi 2.0? You and I sit down now 5 years from now, are we just going to be like, you know what? It just replaced it with a more efficient, but it's the same poor people, middle class didn't get experience. The unbanked or underbanked didn't improve. When I read the Bitcoin white paper, I thought when I was in college and I sent my mom money to help my siblings, I had to go through Western Union. They took 12%.
Yeah,
so
crazy.
Right, 80. I sent $100, she gets 88. Are we going to realize? I also thought of like a woman in Nigeria. All she needs is a smartphone and an internet connection.
Yeah.
She create a website, sell hats, T-shirts. Like you could participate in the economy. Or is this industry going to realize is going to lift people up, help build wealth, or is it just JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, or are they all going to just sort of usurp it? I mean, Jack Dorsey, who obviously, some claim he could be Satoshi, right? I mean, he said not too long ago that if Bitcoin is just digital gold, if it's just a digital store of value, then it's a failed project, according to him.
Yeah.
And it'd be time for him to move on to something different. Whether you agree with, I think Saylor takes the opposite view. He thinks the digital gold, digital property is what makes Bitcoin special.
There's a company I know called Votre, and there's other lending and borrowing, but like if Bitcoin could be something where you can borrow against it, you don't have to sell, right? And it could be like a non-taxable event, effectively. Sure. I think that's interesting.
Property in Manhattan, digital property in Manhattan.
That's what Saylor was talking about, right? Yeah. So it's fascinating. But John, anything else that I missed that I should have asked you? That any hot takes on anything coming up at all?
No, I think it's the biggest, most bullish time to be. I know price appreciation isn't acting like it. I would have predicted if the president had issued an executive order that said not just not sell Bitcoin, but acquire it,
Yeah.
that Bitcoin would be at 150,000, but it's not,
Yep.
right? It's far from that. But I think it's coming. You know what I mean? If it's not, then I might need a job because I declared this publicly. You know, I have 85% of my net worth in crypto.
That's right.
Predominantly Bitcoin.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm a believer. So anything I say, I have a little bit of confirmation bias.
No, of course. Well, and I appreciate the transparency, right? Thank you again so much for coming on Block Jewel, and I hope to have you back again soon.
It's my pleasure, brother.
Awesome.